Good morning, good afternoon, as the place you are in. Welcome to AFOMP School webinar. As you know that the AFOMP has started AFOMP School webinar since June 2021. We did 7 webinars in 21, and this is the third AFOMP School webinar. In addition to AFOMP webinars, which started in June 2020, and till date, we have completed 22 AFOMP webinars. 23rd will be on the 1st of April. This AFOMP School webinar is a very, very important topic, and that will be dealt by Professor Carmel Karunya, and he will be speaking on real world case studies in medical physics and leadership. Very important to be a good leader to take the profession to its desired height. And he will be speaking, I will be moderating. You all know very well our today's speaker, because he is one of the towering personalities into the medical physics leadership things, and he is doing a lot of webinars, seminars, workshop, training program to inculcate and bring the next generation of the leadership in the medical physics. And he has brought out a book which is very, very popular, Leadership and Challenges in Medical Physics, a strategic and robust approach. And this has been published. We have written about it into our JMP and other things. So just a brief introduction of today's speaker, Professor Carmel Karunya. He is the head of medical physics at the University of Malta. Professor Karunya specialized in diagnostic and interventional radiology, radiation protection, medical devices, physical agents, and legislative, professional, and educational and training issues in medical physics. By recognizing the importance of education and training and professional issues for the development of the medical physics profession, he has dedicated the last 20 years of his career to these matters and has over 60 papers and innumerable conference presentations in these areas of leadership and to his name. He is a past chairman of the Education and Training Committee of the AFOMP, European Federation of Organization Medical Physics, and I'm very happy that AFOMP has signed an MOU with AFOMP to further the scientific collaboration, professional development, and education. And as I talked about, he is a leader and written a lot of books. I will not waste the time in talking about him. And I will be, before I hand over the floor to him and share his PPT, dear participant, please kindly mute so there is no disturbance, and also put up your camera so you get a good bandwidth. Whatever queries you will have, please type into the chat box. I will collect all those questions and we'll have a discussion to your satisfaction. Thanks. With this brief introduction, thanking Professor Carmel Karunya for taking out time from his busy schedule for this very important topic for our AFOMP and also participants from other countries. So the floor is yours, Professor Carmel. You can take over.
Thank you, Professor Nchogula. I will now share my screen.
It's visible.
Okay, can you see the?
Yeah,
see it now in full screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Chogulu, for that nice introduction. My name is Professor Kamil Karwan. I'm from the University of Malta. Malta is a very small island in the Mediterranean, much smaller than India, definitely. Okay, but in terms of medical physics and the leadership and education and training, we're very, very, very strong. Today we'll have three parts to this presentation. First, we'll have an introduction to strategic and robust leadership in medical physics. That will take us to about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. Then we'll look at some examples of real-world case studies from the trenches, what I call examples from the trenches. These are examples that were sent by people like you, okay, and medical physicists. Not specifically for this, but for a course that I do on medical physics leadership. And finally, we'll take one or two case studies and look at them more in detail. And at the end of the session, we'll have a question and answer session for all your questions. So please put in your questions and I will answer as many of them as possible. So let's start with the first one. Let's start with an introduction first to know that what we are talking about, okay? An introduction to strategic and robust leadership in medical physics, an international perspective, because I always say that leadership in any profession, and not just medical physics, it's something international today. We live in a global world, okay? So we have to look at things in a very wide perspective, otherwise we won't move forward. First of all, why the emphasis on developing good leaders? Because without good leadership, nothing gets done. Departments are ineffective, projects do not move forward, the profession does not develop locally, nationally, regionally, or internationally. We've all had experiences, I'm sure, in our life of good leaders and bad leaders. Good leaders move projects forward, move the profession forward. Not so good leaders work in the reverse. They produce more problems than actually solve. Why the emphasis on preparation for leadership in medical physics? Because unfortunately, first of all, often there is no leadership training in most medical physics education and training programs. Many masters programs barely talk about leadership at all. In my program in Malta, where we have first an undergraduate degree in physics, medical physics, and radiation protection, and then a master's in medical physics, we start leadership a bit even in the undergraduate course. Because society has become too complex for leading simply by intuition and off-the-cuff decision making. Today's society is simply too complex. I remember when I was a younger medical physicist, things were much simpler. Even in terms of, for example, we take imaging modalities, we had one or two imaging modalities. Now we have many, and they're increasing all the time and increase complexity all the time. But not just the devices that have become more complex. Even society itself, even hospitals themselves have become more complex, more professions in there, more interactions between different professions. There's a big interaction. And the third point, with economics, okay? In a world dominated by austerity economics, where everybody's trying to not spend too much money, it has become almost a religion now not to spend the money, even when sometimes it's excessive. Fake information, we read a lot of fake information on the media and bluff and exaggerated, sometimes interprofessional competition. Being a good scientist is not enough for an individual professional or the profession to succeed. Strong strategic planning skills have become not just important, but essential. In a world like this, you can't just say, I'm a good physicist, yeah, I'm very good in maths, everything will be cool and smooth. It doesn't work like that. Today, you have to be not just a good scientist, but also a good strategist. Few leadership resources specifically targeted to medical physicists. There are very few resources. There's only one book which I have put out because I realized there weren't any. So I have taken all the experience that I have gained over the last 25 years, and also the experience of many other leaders from around the world, and discussions that we have had over coffee and meals, and what we should be doing and how we should be leading. So in this book, it's not just my experience, but there's the distillation of the experience of many, many people. The younger generation needs to be prepared to take over when it's time for this generation to retire. We're good leaders, guys, quite good leaders, but even we have to retire. And it's important that we prepare you as the younger leaders.
Sorry, sir.
So yes?
We only see slide one. Is that right?
Let me do this. Do you see this like that?
Yes.
Do you see the second slide now? Why the emphasis on developing good leaders? Okay, so I'll leave it like that. Okay. So this is what I have been saying. The younger generation needs to be prepared to take over when it's time for this generation to retire. And it's important that we prepare you for taking over our place, okay, and move the profession forward in the next years. In today's complex world, the development of strategic and robust leaders, and we'll also be defining both strategic and robust in a minute, should become an integral part of the education and training of medical physicists. It shouldn't be something that we, after you do your master's in medical physics, most of the science, then you find 2 hours and do something on leadership at the end, and hoping that you will be turning your students into leaders. It doesn't happen that way, because a leader has to be developed with time. It takes time to develop leadership in people. This is a paper that I published on medical physics. It's one of the counterpoint discussions, and it's freely downloadable. I suggest that you download it because it has a very good discussion. Look at this. In a world dominated by austerity economics, fake information, bluff, and interprofessional competition, being a good scientist is not enough for an individual professional or the profession to succeed. We've already said that, but listen to this. In fact, sometimes being a good objective scientist can sometimes actually be a handicap. The reason is, that we are, as I always say, we physicists are the sons and daughters of Galileo, in the sense that we always try to say the truth, to be objective as much as we can, because that's what makes science and physics in particular so strong, objectivity. Yet we work in a hospital where there's a lot of subjectivity, okay? A lot of people giving opinions and pushing personal agendas, which are not always based on objective thinking. And it's important that we learn to survive in such an environment, not just survive, but also thrive, move forward, okay? But for us to move forward, we have to, first of all, accept that type of environment. We have to accept that hospitals are not physics labs, okay? Where all the readings are objective and we can all agree what the reading is, because there's only one reading, okay? And we can look at it and, okay, we can discuss whether it's accurate or whether the calibration has been done properly. But again, the discussion is always objective. But we often end up in hospitals with discussions with groups where there's a lot of emotion and discussions where objectivity is often lost. And we must also learn how to tackle such situations. Strong strategic planning, management, and communication skills have become crucial. If you're not capable of communicating your ideas to others, and not just to other physicists, but to other professions, or to management of the hospital, or sometimes even to patients, okay, and to patient groups, then the profession will not move forward, and you will not move forward. So what is the process of strategic leadership? What is strategic leadership? What do we mean by this? Actually, it's a process. It's a way of doing things, a perspective and a process, but at the same time. Let's look at the steps of the process. First of all, set short, medium, long-term future vision. This is crucial for the group you are leading in collaboration with the members of the group. You need to be clear where you want to go. Often many people go every day to hospital, they solve problems as they come along, okay? And they never sit down and think, okay, where would I like this group to be in 1 year's time, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time? Where would I like my department to be? Okay. And this is very important to think about and to discuss it with the rest of the group that you are leading. If we don't know where we're going and it's not clear to everybody, then how can we achieve it? And in my opinion, setting the future vision is the most important aspect of leadership. That people know, look, we know where we want to be in 5 years' time. Let's all work for that, okay? But that future vision must be defined properly. It must be a practical vision that depends on the local environment that you're in, okay? If you're from a small island in Malta, like me, I can't hope to achieve something like big research groups of 20 or 30 people, okay, with €1 million of research money. It's not possible. So what can I do within the restricted resources that I have? Okay, and I find a vision in that. Your vision is the guide that will help you keep you focused on your objectives in the noisy, distracting environment of modern healthcare organizations. Modern healthcare organizations are big, many patients moving in and out all the time, many problems go all the time. So you need to have a vision, you know, when you're at one point during the day, you have 5 minutes, and you can look at what you have done in the morning and what you're going to do in the evening, and you have to tell yourself, okay, what I have done this morning and I'm going to do this evening. Though, how does it fit to a future vision? They were. Hello?
Carmel, the slides are not moving, I think. The slides are not moving.
It should be on the process of leadership.
Yeah.
It's not there?
Slides are not moving.
I can't understand why. I'm sorry about this. It doesn't normally happen. Let me sorry. Let me try to do this. Are you in slide 4 now? It's called the process of strategic
leadership. I have come to the slide I'm seeing is the process of strategic leadership.
Okay, so you're on the right one. Okay.
Yeah. Oh.
All right. Thank you. Please always tell me. I don't know why this doesn't normally do it. But I have noticed that from if you go in different countries in the world, believe it or not, things act slightly different, even though it's Zoom all the time. But please always keep a watch out and indicate to me immediately. So this is the future vision. This is the first point that I was talking about. Once you have a future vision, which is clear in your mind where you want to go, then carry out an objective gap analysis. That is the difference between your desired future vision and the actual present situation on the ground. Okay, so this is where I want to go. This is where I am now. Okay, so this is the gap that I have to solve. Okay, that's why it's called the gap analysis. Where do I want to go? Where is my future vision? Where am I now? Then carry out an objective, what is known SWOT analysis. I'm sure many of you have perhaps heard now this word SWOT, okay, with respect to that vision. What are the strengths and weaknesses of the group with respect to that vision? What are the strengths of my group and even myself that will help me to achieve that vision? Okay, what will help me achieve that vision? What are the weaknesses of my group or even myself, which will hinder me from achieving that vision? This is very, very important. Often we, in terms of strengths, it's quite easy for us to do it. Psychologically, it's easy for us to look at our strengths, but often we try to avoid our weaknesses. This is a major mistake because it's your weaknesses that can destroy you. Your strengths will move you forward, but your weaknesses can destroy you. So it's important to acknowledge that they exist, admit that they exist, because once you admit that they exist, then you can take steps to solve them, to remove those weaknesses. What are the external opportunities which can help me achieve my vision? Are there funding opportunities? Are there legal changes in the country that will help me achieve that vision? Are there technological changes that can help me achieve that vision? On the other hand, are there external threats that could create obstacles for me in achieving that vision? Again, the opportunities and threats are super important. If you don't grab your opportunities, you miss your opportunities, you're in trouble. You'll always have opportunities coming, but you can't afford to throw them away. Again, external threats. There will be threats to your group, to your profession, to your vision, to what you'd like to do. You must realize that these threats exist, okay? And see how you can mitigate or avoid totally or eliminate totally those threats. Set specific objectives leading to the desired vision and a strategy to achieve them. Things are not going to change by magic. They're not going to change on their own. If I'm going to move from this level to this level, I need to set up a strategy. Hey, okay, how am I going to move from here to here? So I get the group together and we discuss together, how can we move? You as a leader will collect your ideas and the ideas of your group and try to bring them together. And then you have another meeting to check whether you can improve that strategy. You discuss what could be the obstacles in for you not to be able to carry out the strategy. What opportunities you can grab from here and there for you to be able to achieve it. Assess your achievement or otherwise of those objectives. Readjust your strategic plan iteratively. So after a year that you have started your strategic plan, say, okay, I have started this strategic plan a year ago. What have I done? What have I achieved in this year? Have I achieved what I wanted to achieve? Have I not achieved? Does the plan need to be adjusted, okay, to make it more practical, perhaps? Or perhaps some new opportunities have arisen that I can incorporate in the new strategic plan. This is strategic thinking, guys. Not leaving things to chance, not leaving things to probabilities. Okay, you set up your future vision. Where am I? What is the gap? What are the strategies to close that gap, to bridge that gap? This is strategic thinking. You should be on slide 5 now, Aaron. Can you confirm, please, that it's moving?
Yes. But you can go to the presentation mode.
Yes, I will try it, but I'm not sure it will work. I tell you, because it depends on from. Okay. Is it on 5 now?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The ability, what is the strategic leadership? This is a definition from my book, in fact. The ability to guide a specific group, team in developing an appropriate vision, to persuade the members of the importance of that vision, of the members of the group, to facilitate the development of a strategic plan to achieve that vision, and to be able to motivate that group to work collaboratively, willingly, and effectively towards ensuring that the vision is achieved. Okay. So creating the vision, creating the plan, and then motivating your group. It's not an easy thing. It can be very easy, it can be extremely difficult. It depends on the personalities of the people you have in your group. And you can't always choose. I mean, if you're starting a new group, perhaps you can employ new people, and you can be very careful in your interviewing and choose the right people. But sometimes you go into a hospital, a group has already been there, and you have been put as leader, and you have to work with what you have. Okay. And there will be problems of motivation or not. There could be, you can be lucky and have a very good group. You can be less lucky. And these are things that have to be thought about. Defining robust leadership. So we have seen the definition of strategic. Let's see what we mean by robust. We characterize leaders as being robust when they are capable of maintaining focus on the vision and adapting their mental perspectives and psychological behaviors such that the vision is achieved irrespective of environmental changes, conditions, and stressors, things like political changes, economic changes, socio-psychological changes, legal changes, okay? It is easy to do well when the environments are favorable and supportive, but difficult times test a leader's robustness. Difficult times are challenging, but they're also an opportunity for a leader to develop their robustness and their stature as a leader among their peers. So challenges should be taken not only as a problem, but also as an opportunity. A challenge is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your leadership, to demonstrate your leadership capabilities to your group. So don't look at challenges as problems, just problems. Start looking them as opportunities. How can I use this problem that has arisen to show that that I have good leadership qualities? Robust leaders need to be psychologically tough, resilient, bold, and respectful of others without being timid. Robust leaders may bend but not break. Okay, this is the hallmark of a robust leader. He might adjust his position accordingly, but not break with his ideals or break on what he would like to achieve. Here are some thoughts for you to reflect on. First of all, what type of... We should be on slide 8. Is it okay?
No, we only see slide 5.
9?
We're on 5, sir.
We are on 5. Defining strategic leadership. We are on 5.
Here I'm on 8.
No.
Okay, I'd better go to this, Aaron, because this is what...
Yes, sir.
Are you on slide 8 now?
Yeah, 8. What
Okay.
type of group will you lead, right?
Okay, this is okay. I leave it on. This system always works when I put the slides on the side and I click on that, and I found that that's the only system that works wherever you go. So what type of groups are you willing to lead? Different medical physics groups require different styles of leadership. So what is the... You are a leader, okay? What is the... what group are you leading? There are many types of groups, and each of them require a different style of leadership. For example, are you a university professor leading a new group of a new group of medical physics trainees? Are you the leader of a special interest group dedicated to the development of a specific area of professional practice? A time-limited task group set up for a specific, well-defined objective to do with a specific task? A team of medical physicists within an independent medical physics department? A small team of medical physicists within a large department managed by physicians or radiographers, so it's not managed by medical physicists? The members of your national medical physics professional organization, you're the national leader of your country? A team of medical physics academics in a university department? A multidisciplinary team set up for a specific task? And increasingly virtual teams with members geographically distributed in different countries and time zones? Notice these are all different types of groups. And each one of them will require a different style of leadership, which is something that you have to think about, you have to read about. Here is an essential to-do list for the strategic and robust leader. First of all, clarify your vision. Whatever the group, whatever the type of group you have of that list, you always need to do this. Clarify your vision. What state would you like the project, department, profession to be by the end of your leadership tenure, by the end of you finish your leadership time of leadership? Where would you like the group to be? Then decide on the style of leadership to adopt. If you are lucky with personalities, attitudes, motivation, levels of team members, happily democratic in style. If you're lucky and you have a nice group, you move on with a democratic style of leadership. You give a lot of opportunities for the group to even take on the people in the group to take on leadership roles themselves. But it's not always like that. Sometimes you have you have to be what I call the benevolent authoritarian. You have to be an authoritarian to maintain discipline in the group, but a benevolent one in the sense that you always show that you're being an authoritarian, not because you're like to be a dictator, but because that's what is necessary for the group to move forward. You're doing it for the good of the group, not for yourself. In practice, often you have to shift between both types of styles, even with the same group. So when you see that things you might have to start in an authoritarian way, and then you'll find that they are quite okay. So you move to a democratic style, or you start with a democratic style and you find that it's not really working. Some people are taking advantage of the fact that you're democratic, so you have to move towards a more authoritarian way of doing things. And again, this is a style. You shouldn't have one style of leadership. That's not good. You should have 3, 4 styles of leadership. There are books, styles of leadership in your mind, so that you adopt the leadership style which is necessary for that particular situation. Have a deep personal commitment. Otherwise, do the right thing. Make way for someone else. If you're not ready to make a personal commitment for what you want to do, then move away and make way for somebody else who is ready to do the thing properly. Remember, medical physics is something serious. There's patients' well-being at stake. If we don't do our work properly, people die. If we don't do our work properly, they have cancer and nobody realizes that they have cancer. I mean, so our work is very important. And it's very important to realize this and make sure that we personally are committed. Conduct an honest self-analysis of personal strengths and weaknesses. Look at your personal strengths and weaknesses as a leader. None of us is a perfect leader. And we need to develop our leadership. So we're not perfect at all. Okay. So what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? What can I improve about myself? You cannot become a leader overnight. Becoming a good leader is a gradual process that it takes years to become a good leader. But it's normal. Everybody's like that. Okay. Conduct an honest audit of the strengths and weaknesses of your team. Even your team will have strengths and weaknesses. You have to make an audit of that. Scan the environment for opportunities to improve the strengths and eliminate the weaknesses and threats for yourself as a leader and also for your team. Pay very careful attention to the threats. Threats can be very dangerous. You need to know about them, think about them, check where they are coming from, check how you can defend the group against them. Set specific strategic objectives which are doable. Don't put some crazy, exaggerated objectives which can never be achieved. Your strategic plan needs to be a realistic strategic plan. Work at it till the vision is achieved. Keep on going. You will never achieve 100%. None of us have ever achieved 100% of what we'd like to achieve. It simply, life is not like that. But if you work hard and aim high, you can achieve a lot. If you achieve 80% of what you have achieved, that's a good percentage. And be happy with that. Don't always say, oh my God, I haven't achieved 10% or 20%. Always look at what you have achieved, not what you have not achieved. You only look at what you have not achieved to check why you didn't achieve it. Was there something that you could have done better and it could have been achievable? Prepare the next generation. It's important that someone else continues the task when you leave. None of us is eternal. Important to accept handing over to others gracefully. It's important as a leader to say, okay, I must have a few of my younger ones capable of taking over when I can't go on anymore, or I don't want to do anymore. Sometimes we've been 30 years or 40 years doing something, you want perhaps to do something else in your life. So it's important to have others to whom you can hand over, and hand over in a graceful way, not try to maintain your position forever, okay? But try you shift over to others in a graceful way. That's also a very good hallmark of leadership. In my case, for example, I see one of my tasks is to help my young medical physicists build their CVs. So I give them as many opportunities as possible for talks in conferences, to add their name to papers, to contribute to papers, and so they can add their name to papers, okay, to improve their CVs. But always remember that leadership is a personal journey, because what will be achieved during your leadership will depend on your own personal and professional history, your own personality, level of commitment and attitudes, the personality, level of commitment and attitudes of those you would be leading, of the group, the circumstances you find yourself in. Life will throw many leadership opportunities at you, but sometimes also the unexpected. So each leadership is not one model that fits everybody in this world. None of us, I mean, I've met a lot of leaders in my life. Each one of us has own biography, an own personal journey. And even you, as a future leader, will have your own personal journey, depending on where you were born, first of all, in which country you were born, okay? At what time, at what age in your life you went into medical physics, whether you went very early or whether you went later on in life, okay? Whether there are other medical physicists in your country, whether there are already strong groups, or whether you're starting afresh. In my case, there was nobody in my country, and nobody even knew that medical physics existed. None of the politicians, none of the health ministries, none of them knew what medical physics, what was that. So each one of us, but in my case, notice I used it to become a good leader. I said, okay, this is a really super challenge. How can I do it? And we have improved a lot. However, notwithstanding the challenges, if you are willing to work hard, grasp opportunities, dive into it, okay? Don't keep on thinking, shall I do it, shall I not do it, shall I do it, shall I not do it, because you'll end up wasting half of your life trying to take a decision. You just say, look, this in my opinion, this profession and this project and this situation is important for patients. It's important for myself, because I am a future patient. I might even be a patient now, for my family, because they are also patients. My friends, they are all potential patients, and it will be important for them. I will do it. It's something worth working for. The attitude for success is, this is how I look at it. I have one life. I want to do something worthwhile with it, something to be able to look back to with pride. I mean, when we become older, and we will all become older, we can't, okay, when you are young, guys, many of you are young, so for this might seem a long way for you, but it will come also. You'll also become older, okay? You need to be able to look back at your life with pride that you have done something with it, okay? Not just watch TV, okay? But you have actually done something for society. You have done something to leave the world a bit better than you found it. Look at this. This is a very famous quotation by Steve Jobs. If you want to make everyone happy, don't be a leader. Sell ice cream. As a leader, you will be facing situations of conflict, for example. And we have to accept this. And don't think it's only in medical physics, I can assure you. Okay? Steve Jobs had a lot of it in his career, but he made a fantastic career. Okay? Physicists are intelligent scientists. We are objective in our arguments. We see conflict, but we see conflict as a waste of time. I agree totally. It's really a waste of time. But we have to accept it. It's part of life. Prepare yourself psychologically for conflicts. Make an a priori decision that when it's a fight or flight situation, what is known as a fight or flight, should I go for it or should I run away? Okay. Decide in advance that you're going to go for it. Don't try to take a decision when you're in the actual situation. Okay, because you wouldn't know what to do. The decision has to be before you go for something. Say, okay, well, what will I do if this happens and this happens? What will I do? I will go on. Okay. Otherwise, you will lose your own pride and enthusiasm. If you don't go for the fight, and by fight I don't mean a physical fight, but you know, determined to do something, you lose your own pride and enthusiasm. Don't try to avoid conflict. Ultimately, avoiding conflict wears you down much more than facing conflict. If you try to avoid conflict, you will actually become more tired than facing it, because avoiding conflict drains you of energy, drains you of your energy and your enthusiasm. It's better to face the conflict. You'll find that at first it's tiring, but in times it will become easier and easier, and it will be more, you become accustomed to conflict and see it as another thing in everyday living, not something to worry about unnecessarily. Preparing oneself for leadership. Many ways. Enter a national, regional, international leadership and mentoring program. For example, this is one. It's a leadership and mentoring in medical physics. Okay, by Professor Kwan Hung Eng, and he set it up. It's still at its beginning stage. It has been for a few years, but you know, it's such a group always takes time. But go for it, register, okay, and become part of this. Or everything is online, so it's not a problem. Secondly, read about leadership. This is my book here. Okay, by the way, during this session, you have, not during the session, even afterwards, you have 50% reduction in this, okay? I managed to convince them again to extend this because they only gave it for the first year. I told them, please extend it because there are many people in the world. Unfortunately, these days books are quite expensive, but at 50% reduction, it's okay now. And read about it, because when you read a book like this, you are reading the experience of previous leaders. So you are reading, oh my God, this guy had to go through this guy had to go through this guy did it this way, this guy did it that way, okay? So the number of ideas you have on how to tackle problems increases. Don't try to become a leader by trying to find everything by experience on your own. Experience is okay, but reading about it so that you will have sort of the prior experience of past leaders will help you to become a faster leader, to become a good leader faster. So use the experience of others. That's why books are written. Otherwise, I would have spent two years writing this book for nothing, okay? Which isn't what I want. I had other things to do in life. I'm assuming that it has been one of the big sellers of these AOP books. And I'm glad that, and I'm hoping that it will help many of the young leaders to move to leadership and to become very good leaders as fast as possible. You can go for a course. This is a course of leadership that I carry out. You can go to that website over there. It's like a mini MBA specifically designed for medical physicists. This was written by one of the first people who actually attended the course, Etienne Bolanes from Sweden. And it was a very good idea. I said, thank you. I thanked him for the idea, and because it's really what I wanted to do. And so I put it there. Leadership in medical physics, development of the profession and the challenges for the medical physics expert. I had started it at diagnostic and intervention radiology only because that's my area. But now from the next one, it will be for all three areas. Because people from oncology and nuclear medicine, they're always complaining to me, how come there isn't anything for us? And it hasn't been set up by oncology, the radiotherapy physicists and nuclear medicine physicists, so I'll be incorporating it in this one. I am hoping that after this year, COVID will be a history, at least done, and we can do this again. There's a lot of it online, but then the last week, we meet in Prague, in the Czech Republic. Prague is a very lovely city. We meet there because I invite 3 or 4 European leaders usually, but sometimes if the money is available even from outside Europe, I invite them there so that the young leaders can talk to them directly, can ask them questions directly, can present the problems that they have in their country directly, and the panel of international leaders will answer them directly. And so this is a very important process. At the end, there will also be, for those who want even an examination, I'm doing the examination. You tell me, why do you have you don't have to do the examination. If you do the examination, you get twice the CPD points. Why am I doing examination? For the simple reason that I'm personally, I'm fed up with so many courses and where with attendance only, where a person who is attentive in what he's doing, he was attentive, he attended all the lectures, he participated in the lectures, and he really knows what he has learned a lot. And somebody who's sitting at the back looking at his emails, and they get the same attendance certificate. I think this is not just unfair, it's actually dangerous, in the sense that, for example, if the course is on treatment planning, and you have this guy at the back, and he's not listening to anyone, and you give him a certificate that he has done a course on treatment planning, and in fact he has done nothing because he wasn't even paying attention. So I think sometimes this handing out of certificates without any examination at the end is sometimes dangerous, in my opinion. These are the groups, the first 3 groups. This is the first group that we had, 2015. The second group. Third group. They were always a very mixed group. We have had from This group included people from the USA to the Middle East to all over Europe. And this is the way it's structured. Look, you have an online phase which starts in November. It's for 4 months until February. And you'll have things to read on the, you don't have to attend. It's asynchronous, because since I have people from all over the world, you can't have one which is synchronous. So I put up the PowerPoints and the reading list for the reading things and notes for them. And then we'll have online groups where they can contribute anytime that they want, and I can answer their questions anytime that is possible. Okay, so thank you for your attention for that one, the first one. How would you like to do things, Aaron? Do you want to do some questions now before we go on the second one, or will you leave the questions to the end?
Hello. I think we will go for question answer at the last. We should
Okay.
go for the second session.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So I'll move on to the second PowerPoint then. Okay. Can you please confirm that you can see the PowerPoint examples of real-world case studies from the trenches?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Okay. In this shorter PowerPoint, I'm going to show you some examples of case studies that we have solved, we have discussed and solved during that course that I have told you about, or during other courses that I have done online. Because I always ask people to send their case studies. Sometimes we do master classes, okay? And we ask people to send in their own problems. And then we discuss that. We're not going to solve them now. I'm just going to give you sort of, just to give you a taster of what we do in our courses. Then in the third presentation, we'll take one of them, we'll take the first one and discuss it in full, okay? So look at these examples. Let's take the first one. This is the one that we'll be discussing in the third. Management of interprofessional relationships. So there are 5 chest radiography rooms in my hospital, each run by a different team of radiographers. I have noticed that one of the rooms is repeatedly exceeding the local diagnostic reference levels which I have established. How should I tackle it? The team of radiographer doesn't like people investigating their techniques. And this is quite a common occurrence, okay? Nobody likes other professions butting in what they are doing. I think it's silly, in my opinion, because we should all learn from each other. But in the real world, you find this. How should we tackle it? And we'll be discussing this case study in full in the third PowerPoint. Notice when we do these courses, we tackle real world problems, not artificial things or just real world problems. Look at this one. This was sent to me by a person from a medium, well-sized, well-developed country in the EU. Our medical physics department works under the governance of the Department of Radiology. And all decisions made by us need the approval of the lead radiologist. Our budget is also under the control of the Department of Radiology. Sometimes the advice that we give conflicts with the views of the lead radiologist. Our medical physics department does not only support the Department of Radiology, but is also involved in many other hospital departments, involving work with ionizing radiation and non-ionizing radiation, like cardiology, gastrointestinal, bronchoscopy, orthopedics, etc. Medical physics is also involved in the procurement of new medical devices for the hospital. We think that it would be better if the medical physics department was not under the governance of the Department of Radiology, and we need to convince the hospital management team that this is the right way forward. How should we go about it? Okay, notice it's a real case study. It happens in several countries. How should one go about it? How to convince hospital management? Huh? Let's take another example, another case study. Promoting team spirit and motivation in the medical physics department. This was sent to me by a head of department of medical physics from a major, well-developed EU country. So it's not a small country, this is a big one, and with a history of 50 years of medical physics. Okay, not a country where the medical physics profession is new. And from a very well-known international hospital university. I have a strong team of 20 staff, consisting of a combination of medical physicists and dosimetrists with an exquisite range of experiences, from trainees to many years in the clinical environment, as well as team members coming from an academic background. So here's a very nice team. He's very lucky, this guy, having 20 people with this range of experiences. I usually find myself extremely busy and not delegating as much as I should, delegating to others. There are many tasks which I end up doing myself, as it seems easier than reaching out and asking people to do it. This goes from small to big projects, as well as routine tasks. So yes, this problem, this guy of finding it difficult, we don't know why it's finding difficult, we had discussed it, to delegate to the other members of his staff. And he ended up doing a lot of things himself. What is the best way to coach individual team members to work on supervised and conclude projects? What would be a positive and appropriate way to progress when there is no progress in a project? Deadlines are not being met. I disagree with the way a project needs to be done. He's the leader, he's the head, or direction it needs to go. My team is hardworking and they're all very clever, and I feel that not being able to find the best routes for the above issues may have hindered our progress and even promoted frustration. So this head of department, he's doubting his own leadership. He's doubting whether it's a problem with him or with the group. It's not an easy thing to analyze. Often, usually, it's a mixture of both. Because the person seems to be quite honest in the way he's doing things. He's not some kind of dictator, obviously. Yet, for some reason, there's some kind of break in the communication between himself as the head and his staff. Case 4, initiating a radiation protection program. I have been employed as radiation protection coordinator for a large regional hospital. I am new to the hospital and new to the city. So this guy has come from another city and he's now in this city. And he needs to set up the radiation protection program. The duties of the job are to manage the radiation protection program for the entire hospital, including departments outside radiology. The position of radiation protection expert had been active for a long time. So there are many departments using radiation following routines and habits that nobody has ever checked. So this had been inactive. It should be inactive. Okay, so for a few years, there wasn't a proper radiation protection expert. So all the departments were using ionizing radiation, following routines and habits that nobody has ever checked. For example, nobody had ever advised surgeons about the requirement to use personal radiation monitors. Persons working in surgery suites with C-arms have not been taught where to stand for optimal radiation protection. Unfortunately, not all professions readily accept new information and changes of routine. Not everybody will accept you trying to tell them the best way of doing things, especially if they have been doing it for many years, even though they know it's for their own good. Remember, one of the problems with radiation is that you don't feel anything. Okay, radiation is falling on you and you don't feel anything. It's not like an electric shock, for example. An electric shock, you feel something, you're careful next time. Radiation, you don't feel anything. Even when you have a patient with a chest x-ray, you send radiation, you get a chest x-ray, patient doesn't feel anything. You send another one, it doesn't feel anything again. Another one, it doesn't feel anything again. So radiation is difficult because people say, oh, I'm not feeling anything. They don't know that in a few years' time, they'll get cancer from that radiation. Okay, so this is one of the problems that we face. Many of them can't imagine the billions of free radicals that are produced each time a beam of radiation falls on you. The national laws, for example, in the case of radiologists, there was a major problem because they never feel anything, and these are radiologists, not patients. They didn't wear their special protective glasses, okay, with lead glass, because they didn't feel anything, and they felt that nothing will happen to them, and the number of radiologists with cataracts was enormous. The national laws state that all professions using radiation equipment should have an annual educational review of radiation protection. How do you implement this education requirement for people who are confident in their routines? They are quite sure they're doing things well, even when these routines have never been assessed in terms of radiation protection by a competent radiation protection expert. As I said, they feel nothing. So they think nothing will happen to them. Even psychologists, sometimes even doctors have this psychological thing that nothing will happen to them. They tell other people not to smoke and they are smoking themselves. Okay. Even if they do agree that radiation protection is important, how do you impose what seems to them to be a waste of time from someone who does not belong to their department? You don't belong to their department, so sort of you're an outsider. What does this guy know about what we do? How do you impose on that they have to wear the radiation dosimeters, that they have to come for this course so that they will know where to stand during the interventional radiology? And notice again, this is from a major, well-developed EU country. So don't think it's from some country which isn't. From a very well-developed country, very rich country. And yet you have the same attitudes. Because ultimately these attitudes are more psychology than physics. And psychology is important to also notice, to be able to treat, to solve these problems. Case 5, multiple medical physics professional associations. So we have a country with not one medical physics professional association, but 2 or 3. I have had to deal with this myself even when I was an officer of the AFOMP. There was a country with 2 medical associations, medical physics associations, how to try to bring them together in a single association, which would be strong enough. Instead of them arguing between themselves, they don't realize that when you fight between yourselves, you are weakening both of them. How do you bring them together? And then there was another country, which I wasn't, this was sent from a European country with 3 national associations of medical physics. Okay. The 3 of them with their ideas. How do you set up a medical physics community which is split, when it's split and there is no unity in the effort? It is quite difficult to convince groups to disband and all come under a single society. And nobody wants to disband his own society. Everybody wants, okay, I will have one society. Everybody joins us, sort of. Okay. So Notice these are real, very difficult leadership solutions like this. And often the only way to solve it is often to bring in the international community to help you. Because and to mediate between the two or three associations. Case 6. Absence of quality control in diagnostic and intervention radiology, a medium-sized EU country this. Quality control in diagnostic and intervention radiology is insufficient in our country. Several reasons: shortage of money, lack of interest by some radiologists, confusion with periodic safety checks. They think quality control is the periodic safety checks. Management thinks it's that. They don't realize there's the difference. Although clinical radiology directors had carried out intensive lobbying activity with the Ministry for Health to solve the problem, they failed. Even the radiologists failed. The ministerial decree following EU Directive 2013/59 Euratom, which is the European law on radiation, has designated the National Public Health Center as the competent organization for performing acceptance testing and yearly status testing and surveying. So their ministry set up this national public. They told him it's in your hands. The needed documents have been prepared. However, the ministerial decree did not deal with the needed financial and human resources, so it is impossible to implement it in practice. So they told these people to do it, and they didn't give them any money. The competent leaders of the National Public Health Center have asked many times for the needed resources from the National Chief Medical Officer, but this has not happened. Ministers, officers, bosses change many times. We have already tried in every possible way. MP Society, University, Radiation Protection Authority. However, a written proposal by us for implementing the ministerial decree has been forwarded to the National Chief Medical Officer. There is, however, unfortunately, no reply for months. Okay, how do you go about this? By the way, I had to go through this a bit myself in my own country, where nobody knows that medical physics exists. How do you solve it? Last case, difficult head. So you have a situation where the head of the medical physics is a difficult person. Again, this is a real situation sent by a young medical physicist. We are 5 medical physicists in the group, 4 radiation therapy and myself for radiology, nuclear medicine and radiation protection. The chief medical physics is working in radiation therapy and does not appreciate physics in other fields. He says that they are not dangerous enough. Okay, so for him only radiation therapy exists. By the way, this is a very, there's a lot of misconception there. The doses in the radiation therapy are very high for the individual patient. Okay, but the population dose in radiation therapy is very low because you are only irradiating few people and they have cancer anyway already. But when you're going to diagnostic, the individual dose is low, relatively low compared to therapy, but then you're imaging millions of people. So the population dose, that is the risk of getting more cancers for the whole population, is extremely high, much higher than the radiation therapy. Super high. So there is there's a big confusion in the minds of many people. It's not just the dose to the individual that counts in diagnostic, it's the dose to the population that increases the number of cancers in society. He does not communicate with the other physicists. The chief radiation therapist, or the chief radiographer has no communication skills and no strategy. So we have a leader, let's put it, not a leader, you have a head of department, because he's a head of department, but he's not a leader. With no communication skills, no strategy, no vision, because this is it, no vision. He hasn't managed to create a plan for his group where they will be in 1 year, 5 years time. The other 3 physicists are the opposite. So they are okay. I tried to move to a different department to have a better chief, although not a medical physicist, but management has no intention to change anything. although they are aware of the problems. So we remain as a group stuck and we cannot put forward new ideas. Notice another again situation. How would you tackle this? And again, we discussed this type of situation in the courses that I do. Okay, so that's the second PowerPoint where I have given you a sample sort of type of real world case studies that one finds during his career. These are all case studies from the real world, actually from real people, from real medical physicists. We'll go to the third one. Okay, Aaron, can you confirm that you're seeing it? Thank you.
Case studies in, right?
Yes, case studies in detail. So now we're going to look at one case study, the first one, in more detail. Then if we have time, we'll look, I've put also another one that we can look in detail, and also giving you something for homework to think about. Let's look at this case study in more detail. So management of interprofessional relationship, because it's such a common occurrence. So this is the case study that we're going to look at. There are 5 chest radiography rooms in your hospital, each run by a different team of radiographers. You have noticed that one of the rooms is repeatedly exceeding the institutional diagnostic reference level, which you have established. So you have established diagnostic reference levels for chest X-rays in your institution. And you have 5 chest rooms, and one of the rooms is always exceeding the diagnostic reference level. Each of the room has a different team of radiographers, and it seems this chest room with this team of radiographers are always exceeding the diagnostic reference levels. How would you tackle it? You know that the team of radiographers don't like people investigating their techniques. This is, again, a common problem. It's not always, but it all depends, I always say, upon the level of self-esteem of the people involved. If they have high self-esteem, it's usually not a problem for them. If they have low self-esteem, problems arise. First of all, look at this. I'm going to put something. Guiding values. It's important that as a leader, you have values that guide you in whatever you do. Again, these will be like your shining light, you know, to keep you on the right track, that you don't deviate from the right track. Search for excellence. We consistently set, pursue, and maintain the highest quality clinical service, education, and research. Teamwork. We recognize that quality healthcare is an intrinsically interprofessional activity. So today, healthcare is intrinsically interprofessional. The different professions can't go in their different directions. You have to work with other professions. You can't work on your own. If you try to work on your own, you will be very limited in what you can do. If you try to work on your own, you'll be limiting yourself. Respect. We respect the dignity, uniqueness, and particular needs of every patient, student, and healthcare profession. So we respect, so this will be very relevant to this, that the dignity and uniqueness of every healthcare profession. Every healthcare profession is important. It has its function for the well-being of the patient. It has its dignity. We cannot look down or look up to other professions. We should look at our other professions as equals. We work with expertise, commitment, integrity, fairness, reliability, and flexibility, hence providing role modeling opportunities to others. When we do things, we try to do them in a way that we give a good example to others, particularly in our case to the younger medical physicists, but also to other professions. Sometimes you have to give a good example to other professions, especially if they are professions which have started. Many of them don't know how to go about things. So even when we tackle this case study, we need to show other professions how we do things, and that we do things in a logical and in a way that makes sense. Service. We maintain positive relationships when fulfilling our duties with respect to the expectations of patients, other healthcare professionals, students. We try as much as possible to be positive in what we do. This is important also in life, otherwise things become a problem. And also tiring. Okay, it's not nice going to work in an environment which is not positive. In fact, it's very tiring, in fact, and you might lose your enthusiasm if you take a negative way of doing things. Lifelong learning. We affirm that in a knowledge-based society, excellence, professionalism, and service are based on a process of lifelong learning. Patient orientation. Ultimately, we always have to keep in mind that our ultimate stakeholder is the individual patient. So ultimately, whatever we do and whichever way we tackle problems and cases, we must keep this in mind. Will what we are doing and the way we are doing it, not just what we do, but the way we do it also, will it improve ultimately the healthcare of the individual patient? First, reflection. First, we need to think. And reflection doesn't mean this, okay? You reflect deeply on the issues before developing strategies, making decisions and taking action. You don't say, oh, I'm going, for example, we take the situation, oh, I'm going to that room that is producing this high doses and start shouting at them, and whether that's not the way to solve things. First, you need to start thinking. Okay, let me check what the situation is. Am I sure that the doses are really higher? Is there something that can there be some kind of other situation why the doses are higher, which could be justified? Now we'll be looking at this. In difficult situations, calm professional thinking is what gets good short and long-term results. Never go directly into battle mode. Never go directly into battle mode. That's one way of making sure you don't succeed. Okay, because people will say, yeah, that guy is always shouting at the okay, and they will not treat you seriously anymore. You'll not be treated seriously anymore. Again, you have Steve Jobs. Okay, keep in mind that you would like to make everybody happy, but you're never going to make everybody happy. Okay, if you want to make everybody happy, you sell ice cream. So there will be times when you'll have to stand up to people, and that is also part of you becoming a good leader. Okay, so let's start. We have seen the background, of course. Okay, things that we have to keep in mind to address this challenge. Let's look at the assumptions. You can have two situations. You either had been part of the team that set up the protocols DRL in the first place. So you could have been part of the medical physics team that set up the DRL, you had set it up, and you had helped set up the protocols. So you know exactly what the situation is. Or you had not been part of the team that set up the protocols or the DRLs, even the DRLs. So here you have an added uncertainty You don't know whether those protocols or DRLs are actually good, because if you haven't done it yourself, you're not sure whether it has been done properly or not. Suppose you have come and you're a new person coming to a hospital, and you don't know even who set them up. Sometimes you go to a hospital and there's no documentation. Theoretically, all these need to be documented. Okay, how was the protocol set up? Who was involved in the team? Was there a medical physicist, if it's a diagnostic, a medical physicist, radiologist, a radiographer, a senior radiographer? Was there a team set up like that? How were the DRL set up? Okay, sometimes you might not know this. So the first thing to decide is whether you know what the situation is or not. If you had been part of the team, then you know you have ensured that the protocols are optimized. Hopefully, because you might say, we did it those 5 years ago. I'm not sure whether they are really appropriate anymore. You had set the DRL yourself. You are sure that the protocols are appropriate. You have checked that no new devices have been installed. Does this room has a new device, which I don't know about? Sometimes, you know, you go and find a new device. A new device has been procured. You don't even know about it, or nobody informed you about it. You should know, but nobody informed you. You have checked that the devices in all rooms have been regularly quality controlled. The first thing to do is go and check the quality control documentation. Have they all been checked, including especially the one where there are the higher doses? First, you need to start doing this homework before you start actually tackling the situation. If you had not been part of the team that set up the protocols, pull out some images from the packs from each room. Say, try to choose standard size patient so that you have the same size of patient. Not take a thin patient from images of a thin patient from one room and images of a thick fat patient, obese patient from another room, from the fifth room. Okay. You have checked the image quality. If possible, try to do it in an objective manner. Not just visually. Take actual measurement, take noise measurement, take a contrast to noise ratio measurements. Okay. So take the images as they look, put regions of interest on critical tissues and organs, and check the noise level. Check the sharpness of edges, okay, on the images. So you have checked the image quality. You have checked the exposure parameters from the DICOM header. You know, the DICOM header can give you a lot of information, guys. You can get a lot of information from that. You don't have to ask what parameters they are using. Just go to the DICOM header of the images, and most of the information is written there. Okay, so notice this is where you haven't been to the room yet. You don't go to the room yet. Okay, start getting information. Okay, start getting information about the different rooms, the different devices in the different rooms. Okay, pull some images from each room and to start getting a feel of what is actually happening. Let's look at the considerations now. First of all, ethical considerations. The patients may be receiving higher exposures than necessary. They're taking unnecessary doses. Ethical guidelines for medical physicists give high priority to patients. For example, AFOMP policy statement 11 states that the well-being of the patient is paramount. We as medical physicists have an ethical obligation to pursue this issue according to the medical ethical principle of non-maleficence. There's one of the medical principles is non-maleficence, do no harm. If we are giving unnecessary doses, unnecessary high doses, we're doing harm. So we're breaking one of the basic medical ethical principles is being broken. So that's in terms of ethics. And it's important to know these expressions, guys. If you know, for example, doctors would use this. They wouldn't just use the word optimization. Okay. Optimization would be a consequence of non-maleficence. Okay, but the principle, the ethical principle that the doctors would know is called non-maleficence. So start learning these expressions so that when you're talking to doctors, you start with this. You don't start with optimization, because for them, optimization means nothing. If you start with non-maleficence, they know what it means. And then you explain how optimization is important for non-maleficence. Legal considerations. Our continued engagement in such issues is part of our legal duties as medical physics experts. So we must be ready to defend our legal position if necessary. Legally, we have a duty and a right to do something about that room. It's a duty and a right. Clearly, your involvement is supported by legislation. For example, in our case in Europe, there's the EU directive, this, and if you look at Article 83 of this, by the way, those of you from Asia, you can download the PDF of this from the internet and go to Article 83 because it speaks about the medical physics expert, we call him in Europe. The directive clearly states that the medical physics expert takes responsibility for dosimetry, including evaluation of the dose delivered to the patient. This includes a requirement to investigate unintended exposure. And here we have a situation of unintended exposure. It's a dose level which is significantly different, higher usually, from the medical exposure intended for a given purpose. So you're expecting, according to your diagnostic reference levels, you're expecting a certain level and you're finding something else. Interprofessional considerations. Again, from AFOMP Policy Statement 11, we must endeavor to work in a collaborative, respectful, and cooperative manner with other healthcare professions. But professional boundaries are sometimes dynamic, things change. From this, we need to be aware that other groups may see their role as threatened by our intervention and as an encroachment on their territory. Okay, there was a time when the medical physicists only knew what needed to be done. Now, for example, radiologists and radiographers, they're becoming better in certain things of optimization. So you need to talk in a different way. You can't talk to them as if they don't know anything. It will be seen as insulting to them. We need to be aware that a medical physicist reviewing a radiographer's technique can easily be seen in this light and as a consequence, strongly resisted. This is a challenge, not a problem. Again, this is a challenge, not a problem. Point 8 of the AFOMP statements asks us to give objective and reliable advice and also ensure that the person rejecting such advice is aware of the safety standards and consequences. So you're also obliged that if a person keeps on rejecting your advice, you are to inform him, and I would inform him in writing. These things should be done in writing, so that later on, if some piece of trouble comes up, okay, you will have evidence that you have actually informed and given that person and given them their advice, because sometimes they will, to avoid problems, they will actually lie, okay, and say, no, he never came and told us anything. So these things happen. Management considerations. If the radiography team does not comply, we should know the procedures for reporting such behavior. If they don't comply, keep on not complying. What should we do? You must know the management procedures. The lead radiographer to be informed. Full written report describing your whole dose audit process, what you did, starting from your initial considerations. And if possible, you might need to go even above that, higher management through the lead medical physicist to the CEO of the hospital, because ultimately, remember, the CEO of the hospital is responsible for things, the head of radiology if it's imaging and done, but ultimately the CEO of the hospital has to face the music. Organizational psychology, or some people call it office politics. If the radiography team does not comply, is it a question of excessive professional pride? Sometimes it's excessive professional pride where radiographers will know everything. It's exaggerated. Professional, personal immaturity from the person, because in my opinion, a person who says he knows everything these days is immature. I will never say that I know everything about something these days, because things change so fast. Absence of authority of the radiography team leader. Is there a problem with perhaps the team leader of the radiography? He's not maintaining sufficient discipline, or the other radiographers? Is it sheer arrogance? You can also have this. Everything is possible. And you need to be able to assess what is it. If it's excessive professional pride, you can understand it. I mean, and you can work with it and treat them as an equal. That's one thing. If it's absence of authority of the radiography team leader, then you have to go above him if he's not capable of controlling his own team. If it's sheer arrogance, you have to move in a different way. Again. Let's look at it step by step now. Suggested step-by-step process to arrive at a solution to the problem. Are the doses from the room much higher than the DRL? Which means it's a very urgent thing, suspension level, you suspend the use of the device, or not much, therefore it becomes an optimization problem. It's less urgent. Review in more detail the quality of a sample of images from that particular room. Is the image of sufficient quality, or is the quality too high? Maybe that's why there's high doses, because they are using too high an MAS, for example, so that they get a very good image, which is not required. Okay. You remember, you just need to have sufficient quality for an accurate diagnosis, not a super high quality image. From the DICOM header, check whether the exposure parameters used are those specified in the actual protocol or otherwise. Do they have a protocol and they're not following it? Check whether there is a justifiable reason for the higher dose. Perhaps the room has a different type of patient load. Do they take the difficult patients only, or the overweight? So obviously, if they only take the overweight and difficult patients, obviously there are going to be higher doses. So it's a justifiable reason. Are they therefore purposely using a different protocol for thicker patients? The follow-up might involve modification of the name of the procedure and protocol to indicate this difference and generation of a different DRL for it. So if there's a situation, you say, so my normal DRL doesn't apply to this room. I have to give this protocol a different name and look out for and set up a DRL specifically for this room if they're only taking difficult patients. Is there a problem with the device? All these are possible, and we haven't noticed. The MP is an expert in device quality control, and test can readily verify machine operation, check the tube output, the automatic exposure control. If a problem is identified, call the service engineer. So notice, I've already done 5 things here, and I haven't spoken to the radiographers yet. This is the message that I'm trying to do. You don't go directly to talk to the radiographers. First, I have to look at these things. By the time I go to talk to the radiographers in that room, I need to know exactly what is happening. Not find the radiographers, they go immediately, and then I find that the device hasn't been checked for 3 years. I mean, okay. If all the above are okay, we have an issue with the performance of the team. If all the previous are okay, therefore we have a problem with the team. This will involve interdisciplinary work. If a group of radiographers have a positive approach to interdisciplinary work, then it's fun. You actually, I mean, whenever I found a radiographer who enjoys discussing okay, an issue, you really enjoy it. You learn from them also, they learn from you, you learn from them, you make new friends. So it's a very positive thing. If not, it is awkward. But there is an issue of patient safety, so it needs still to be tackled, even if they don't want. We have demonstrated our thoroughness by carefully checking whether there is some other cause for exceeding the DRL. So nobody can accuse us of jumping hurriedly to conclusions. We have done a lot of things from 1 to 5. In the previous slide, we have been thorough and professional in our work. We are not accusing people without first checking things. Negotiating this issue requires thought and care. We need to maintain strong, productive working relationships with other professions. We need to ensure our advice is respected and followed, even if unwelcome. Office politics are a part of every organization, and working with others is a skill that the MPE cannot afford to neglect. I would keep in mind that psychology affects us all, including ourselves, and that as well as the above optimization issue, there may be other sensitivities of people to be aware of that bear on your ability to solve the problem. So these psychological issues will affect whether you can solve the problem and to what extent you can solve it. You can't just ignore them. I take measurements and that's it, okay? And write a report and off I go and have a pizza. I mean, it's not the way to do things. Send it to the CEO and off I go. You'll end up destroying any positive environment you will have. Short term, first I would see if I could cooperate with the group in such a way that radiographers would take the results of my investigation and use the results to solve the problem themselves. Try to check whether you can give your results of a report to the radiographers themselves first in the room. And let them meet, perhaps even all 5 groups, and tell them to compare doses between them and review the protocols so that the radiographers themselves will realize, hey, how come one group will tell them, oh, our dose levels are these, how come yours are higher? Okay, so if you can do things that way so that they themselves realize as radiographers between them that there's a problem, you would have solved the problem without creating bad feelings, without you having to impose the solution from the outside. If it does not work, produce a full written report, including your attempts to resolve the issue diplomatically. So write a full report, including ways that you have tried to do things so that there is no conflict. And pass on to the lead medical physicist, if there's one, if not, to top management for direction. What is important is to keep a record. So try everything possible to avoid conflict. But if that doesn't work, then it is your duty to submit that report, whatever other people might say. It's your duty. If you don't hand it in and that report, keep a record, you might get into trouble because it's your responsibility as a medical physicist. Long term, I would also look at training issues. So say, okay, do we think that perhaps this group of radiographers, perhaps, let me look at the last time they had some training. Did they finish the course 15 years ago and they haven't updated their okay, so ultimately, even the psychological problems are a training issue, okay, because groups of workers having psychological issues, they need also to be educated. Okay, because ultimately there are patients at stake here. Okay, so Aaron, shall I stop here so that we'll have time for the question and answer, or would you like me to do another brief case study? Chogil?
I think so. We have time. We can take another case study, I guess.
Okay, thank you. But please leave time for the questions, because theoretically they should start the questions.
Okay.
will they have time for me to answer their questions if I spend another, say, 15 minutes on this?
Um,
Because answering questions is very important.
right now, we do not have much questions in the chat box. So in my opinion, it is better if we go for another case study.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's move on. I'm hoping that there aren't many questions because everybody has understood what I have said. Please, if there are questions, put them forward so that my presentation will be more helpful for you.
Sure, sir, sure.
Now I'm going to look at another type of case study, a personal strategic planning. Look at this. Personal strategic planning, and I'm going to talk over my own personal strategic plan in my career. You need also a personal strategic plan for your own career. Now, 25 years ago, when I started this, I didn't know what the word strategic planning was. So don't think that I did this consciously, sort of. I knew what SWOT analysis is. I had never even heard of it. But intuitively, either because of our physics and mathematics and problem-solving background, okay, I was actually doing strategic planning without knowing it. And I would like to go through my own experience of a personal strategic plan so that maybe it will help you to formulate your own personal strategic plan in life. First of all, I had to set up a vision for myself. We said that strategic plan starts with a vision. My vision was I wanted to achieve these two. Set up the profession in my country, not just be a good medical physicist, but set up the profession in my country because it didn't exist and nobody knew about it. Not just it didn't exist, nobody even knew about it. Most people didn't even know that a directive existed. To be a recognized international leader in at least one aspect of medical physics. I was coming from a small country, but I wanted to be recognized for at least one aspect of medical physics globally, that I'm very good in something. I think this is very important for each of you. Try to find something, a small issue, that you will work at it throughout your life, so that in 10, 15 years' time, you become, if possible, #1 in the world in that. You don't have to be #1, okay, but one of the top ones globally, not just in your country, but globally. I think this is a very satisfactory thing to do for a medical physicist, to have a vision of himself, not just a local vision, but also on a global scale. Where would I like to be in something globally? Then I had to do a gap analysis. So there was a big gap in my case. I was an unknown. Nobody knew about me, not just internationally or European, not even in Malta, because nobody knew that medical physics existed. I come from a very small island in the Mediterranean, not a big country like Germany or so the UK. No colleagues. I was on my own. The profession totally unknown nationally. So there was a big gap between this and this vision, setting up the profession in my country. And being recognized internationally. I wasn't even recognized in my own country, let alone internationally. It was one hell of a gap, I can tell you. Okay. And actually, I didn't know what to do, how to start. And I learned little by little. When you're in a situation like this, you must learn by traveling, guys. It's important to travel. Today, it's less important because with the internet, you can learn a lot. But in those days, the internet didn't exist. And the only way for me to learn was to travel. And I travel to meet other people, go to conferences, so that you'll see what is happening in other countries, and it will help you set up a vision for yourself. Okay. What were my strengths and weaknesses? my strengths? Well, I felt that I was quite an intelligent guy. I mean, I've done physics, I've a BSc in physics and mathematics, and got a very good grade, and the master's, and that time it used to be called applied radiation physics. It wasn't even called medical physics at the time. They used to call it applied radiation physics. They always say that if you have managed to survive a bachelor's and a master's in physics, I think you will survive anything. I think you'll be intelligent enough, because they are not easy courses. I was a good scientific thinker and a researcher. I had good communication and teaching skills because I had been in education, and I had I had started my career teaching 11-year-old guys in a secondary school, a local secondary school. So I had, but I spent about 3 or 4 years there, but I learned a lot on, the different types of psychologists students have, even from an early age. And also, when you are teaching students of that age and that background, you really have to become a good communicator. Because if you're not a good communicator, you've had it. You've had it. They are even more difficult to communicate with than adults, because you have to go down to their level and try to analyze what their psychology is, what their actual knowledge is. And it's a very good exercise, extremely good exercise in pedagogy. Weaknesses, on my own, I was on my own. The profession does not exist. No team to help me achieve the vision. Small island. You can't imagine, if you come from your countries, guys, what this island is. This island, it's a bang in the middle of the Mediterranean. It's an independent state, okay? But it's only 30 kilometers long, believe it or not, only 30 kilometers long by about 20 kilometers wide, okay? The area is about 350 square kilometers. It's nothing, okay? It's nothing. It's a very small island. An island, so I'm even isolated from other countries. I can't just go take a train or a bus and go to another country. Wherever I had to go, I had to take either a ship or a plane. I had neither equipment nor funds. I didn't even have a PhD yet, and overloaded with teaching healthcare professions and family duties. No possibility to do a PhD in Malta because no supervisors existed. And I could not just leave Malta for 3 years to do a PhD somewhere else. I had a family, I had a lot of teaching at my university. So these were the weaknesses. I had strengths and weaknesses. How to find a solution? Let's look at the opportunities and threats. So I'm doing my SWOT analysis. First of all, the opportunities. The EU was giving a lot of importance to education and training and radiation protection for medical physics and healthcare professions. The EU was putting a lot of importance on education and training, and putting a lot of money in it to make sure that healthcare professionals in Europe are well educated. And this, I considered it as an opportunity. Why? Because I had a lot of teaching ability. A lot of teaching ability. I couldn't be very good in doing some super image processing or machine learning or whatever. I didn't even have the equipment, let alone the skills. But in education training, I was good. So I said, okay, this opportunity is something to aim for. Leadership and training and strategic planning for the medical physics profession at the European level was very low or non-existent. The AFOMP was giving at the time very, very little emphasis on education and training, very little. Most of them, my colleagues, didn't even know on the terminology to use for education or for leadership. And SWOT, nobody heard about it. So I started saying, hey, this is an opportunity here. Okay. There is no way for a person like me from a small island that I will compete with these groups in Italy or Germany or France on artificial intelligence, for example, or something like that. Okay, no way I can compete with a 40-member team of medical physicists, full of money coming from industry. The legal developments in the EU regarding radiation protection, which could strengthen the profession if physicists engage. So the EU was putting out these directives with a lot of radiation protection in them. So medical physicists were becoming important. So these were opportunities. Threats: a handful of persons from another profession were trying to stop the medical physics profession from taking off in Malta. So there was a small group from other profession trying to stop the medical physics profession from taking off. So strategies. First of all, I set up a National Medical Physics Association, and that after a few years, and we were only 4 members. I made it into a member of AFOMP, got myself into AFOMP committees. So whenever there was something, I volunteered for the tasks. Whenever there was a task, I volunteered for it. At the beginning, you can't be choosy. When nobody knows you, you can't say, oh, I only want to do this. If I don't do this, I don't do anything. No. You say, what is available? And I go for it. So that people will start to get to know you. And they will see your methods. They will see that you're a person who first of all, who is reliable. If he or she says that he'll do it something, he will do it. Okay. And he will do it properly. If I wanted to become a world leader in something, as I want to do, I needed to find an area which I could do on my own. Required nothing except my brain and the computer, no modern equipment, no funds. I could get a PhD without having to be away from Malta for long periods, and something which I was already good at so that I can move into it quickly. And at AFOMP, nobody was really taking education and training and soft skills, leadership, communication seriously at the time. So that was the best niche to fill, notice. Okay, that was a niche that was empty, nobody was doing it. It was a niche to fill. And this is what you must do, guys. You must find your niche. Okay, niche, particular niche, which nobody is giving enough attention to. So this, first of all, the PhD I did was, first of all, I had examinations in certain things, and I did some experiments which are normal science. But then the title, I wanted to do something different, and look what I did. At that time, I was teaching a lot of healthcare professionals. And when I wanted to teach them, I used to go in Europe and ask them what they are teaching to healthcare professions, and I find that different people are different teaching things to them according to what they think they should be teaching. Obviously, nobody had studied our role in the teaching of the healthcare professions. All physicists were teaching different things. So I said, okay, so this is a research opportunity. It's in education, I'm very good in it. It's in strategy and the team and the leadership, I'm good in it, okay? And most of all, it doesn't require big money, doesn't require equipment, okay? And I did my PhD on this. The biggest problem I found was to find a physics department who wanted to do this, because all physics department wants to do pure science. Finally, I found it in the Physics and Mathematics faculty of Charles University in Prague. And I found it because they were feeling the problem themselves. They were teaching medical students physics, medical physics, and the medical students were complaining. There were a lot of complaints. So they saw me sort of as a person for solving their problem. So they accepted my proposal. In fact, they accepted it so much that they accepted me to have a PhD with them without me paying anything. They told me, we need this. We'll give you the opportunity to do it. Obviously, I had to do everything on my own. I had an official supervisor who was an extremely good supervisor, a very good physicist. He's not with us anymore, unfortunately, but a very, very good physicist and enthusiastic beyond comprehension. But unfortunately, obviously, on education and strategic planning, he knew nothing. But he was a very good academic, so he was capable of realizing whether I was going in the right direction or not. And when I wasn't going in the right direction, he told me, this is too flimsy. He was capable. Perhaps he gave me 5 pieces of advice. It's in the 3 years of PhD, but each one of them changed my direction. So although he couldn't help me in the content, he was very helpful in giving me direction. And that's what you need for PhD. I'm happy to say that the vision has been achieved. Now, I have many papers in this area, recognized as global leader in education and training, leadership and role development in Europe. I have written most. I will give you now, can give you a hint of what I have done. So some achievements of a guy from a very small island. On the national front, I set up the education and training in Malta. Department of Medical Physics obtained European Social Fund money for this. Established legal recognition of the profession. We're established legally. On the regional and European, in this case, I developed the mission statement for the profession at the European level, authored the role and education training chapters of the European guidelines on the medical physics expert, the AFOMP policy statement on education and training, on AFOMP policy statement of the role of the medical physicist, should be the role of, yes, role of the medical physicist. I wrote these myself. I started the UTEMPI, it was my idea, start the UTEMPI project. I did it with Hilde Bosmans from University of Leuven in Belgium. I started this module on leadership, the first in the world. It was the first in the world at the time. Now the Americans are doing something, but not as comprehensive as this. Initiator of the European School for Medical Physics Expert. I started that because I realized that although we have a lot of master's programs in Europe, but we don't have program schools for going beyond the masters. So I started the school. Now it's very well established. Special interest group for teaching physics to healthcare professions. And I have just been asked by AFOMP to write another policy statement on what we should be teaching these. So a few months' time, this should be ready. I was associate editor of the European Journal of Medical Physics for several years, in charge of education and training and professional issues. On the international front, I was one of the first members of the accreditation committee of the International Medical Physics Certification Board. I was chair of Accreditation Committee 1. I was member of the editorial board of the IOPP-IPEM ebook series, and I still am. Even the book that I have written is part of the series. And guys, this is an appeal for you. If any of you feel that you're very good in an area of medical physics, or you're capable of writing a textbook on an area of medical physics, please write to me, because I might give you the opportunity. We see that you have a good project to write a book, which will be very important for your career. Please listen to what I'm saying. Think about it. If there's an area which you feel you're very good at or capable of writing a textbook, because we don't have enough textbooks. For example, at the moment, we need a good textbook on Monte Carlo, on the basics of Monte Carlo. Believe it or not, there isn't a proper book on the basics of Monte Carlo for medical physicists. I've been trying to find an author for years. If any of you are capable, please write to me. I need to hear from you. I can assure you, you'll get a contract to write it. You won't have to pay anything yourself. In fact, you will be paid. Okay, you will be paid to do it. You won't become rich, but you will be paid. You will not pay anything yourself. Please contact me. Finally, I'll give you a small piece of work to do at home. Strategic planning for a medical physics department. Consider your particular medical physics department. Imagine that you are the lead physicist. If you're not, if you're the lead physicist, you don't have to imagine you are. But if you're not, imagine that you are the lead. Describe the present situation of the department. Write it down, not just in your mind, write it down. Which means, what do you think are your strengths, the strengths and weaknesses of your department? Describe a desired future vision. How would you like the department to be, say, in 10 years' time, or in 1 year time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Make a short-term vision and a long-term vision. List 3 gaps between the present situation and your future vision. List the strengths and weaknesses of the department with respect to the vision. What are these strengths and weaknesses that could help me or hinder me from achieving that vision? List the external opportunities available and threats it faces in achieving that vision, and suggest strategies on how to reduce gaps, develop strengths further, eliminate weaknesses and threats by making use of opportunities that are available or can be created by yourself. In other words, create a strategic plan to achieve your objectives. It will be a good exercise for you. Think about it. You don't have to do it immediately because it's something that requires thinking. But write these down. You can download this later on. I'm sure Professor Chogula will down for this for you. Print it and start thinking about it. Take, say, 2 or 3 weeks to write just the present situation. And then spend time on the desired future vision. What should I aim for? Gaps, strengths and weaknesses, and devise a strategy. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Carmel, for an excellent AFOMP school webinar, and 3 presentations, very extensive and very nicely you have explained. And that may be the reason that each and every situation you have taken, tried to explain. There are a lot of compliments, but only one question what I could see into the chat box is, this is from Sanju Thomas. Medical physics professionals are moving away from leadership roles. What are the techniques and methods to promote medical physics leadership in multidisciplinary environment? You have very well explained. Yeah.
Okay. So, can you hear me? First of all, I think, did I understand well that people are moving away from leadership roles, he said?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, this is not a problem only for medical physics. Unfortunately, this has become a problem for all healthcare professions. Because leadership has its nice things about it, but it's not easy. Leadership is not easy. So we have a problem, and that's why I'm doing these talks, to perhaps inspire young leaders to take on leadership roles. I will not tell you why I think it should be done, because obviously we need leaders. If we don't have leaders, the profession will not move forward. But I would like to emphasize one thing: why you should have leadership for yourself, why you should go for leadership for yourself. And I think what I told you earlier in one of the slides, you have only one life, guys. Only one life. I think it's very important that when you're older in life, I give you an example. One of the things I used to do as a young medical physicist, because I didn't have a lot of money, in summer I used to take groups, tourist groups, from Malta to Europe. I would take a group from Malta to Europe, and many of them used to be pensioners, usually pensioners. And I was still a young man then, but I used to try to analyze, why is it that some of the pensioners were happy, even though they were old, they were arriving to the end of their life, yes, yet they were happy, whilst others were not happy at all. Okay, what was the difference between them? And ultimately you will find that the difference was those who were happy could look back at their life and say, okay, now in a few years I'll be dead. Okay, I can't change that. But at least I have looked, when I look back in my life, I realize that I have done something with my life, something worthwhile. So I tell you, go for leadership, forget about the patients. Okay? Forget about the other medical physicists. Go for leadership for yourself. So that when you're older in life, you can look back and you'll say that I have done something with my life. I think this is very super important, because ultimately we would like to be happy. And having a healthy pension and having a time in pension and towards the end of our life, it's super important. It's crucial. So think about it carefully. How to go to become a leader for multidisciplinary groups. This again, the first thing to do, read psychology, guys. Psychology and communication. You must also train yourself to be analyze your own psychology. Start with analyzing your own psychology. Yeah? Okay. Am I a calm person? Am I easily offended, for example? Am I capable of taking criticism in a calm way and answering in a positive way? Okay. It's not easy. I'm not telling you it's easy. It takes time to do these things, but this is the way forward. First, to become a good leader, first you have to work on yourself, not on others. You have no control over others. You have no control over others because other people do whatever they want. You have control over yourself, but okay, you can work on yourself, on your own psychology to improve yourself. Then when you're quite improved, then start trying for leadership things. Okay, but when you are prepared with psychology, read about office politics, for example, different types of personalities that you will meet. Okay, because for example, you will find personalities whom you can never solve. Okay, there are people who have certain problems, psychological, not psychological in the case crazy, but certain psychological traits like narcissism, for example. Okay, read about it. That there's no way of solving it because it's something in the brain. It's something physiological ultimately. The person is bad not because there's a devil in the guy, okay, but because there's something wrong in the brain. I learned this a lot when I used to teach 11-year-olds. For example, there was one I knew immediately that when he grows up, he was going to kill somebody. That's one, this guy, when he was 11. And in fact, he murdered the person when he was older, because you can realize that there is no, the control mechanism in his brain is not there. It's not there. Okay, so certain things that they are physiological. They are not something that you can change. So you have to know about them. First of all, know about them so that you don't end up crazy yourself. Because this is very important. Otherwise, you'll end up crazy yourself. If you don't realize, hey, this is nothing. There's nothing wrong with me. Okay, this is a problem of the other person. Then how to tackle it, and is it possible to tackle it? Because sometimes it isn't. So sometimes it's a question of putting this person, giving him a task where he will produce the least damage. Okay, sometimes it's like that. How do I recognize that person who is really very, very good, so that you can move him to something which is crucial for the group. So ultimately, being a good leader, forget about being a good physicist. You can be a good physicist and a hopeless leader. Okay, you need to be a good physicist, but you need to be a good leader. Develop your psychological and communication skills, and you have to read them about them. Develop yourself. You have to make yourself a good leader. This is what I always say. A leader isn't born. You have to make yourself a good leader. I hope I have answered the question there.
Yeah, true. That's what you have to assert your things by analyzing the situation, understanding the situation, understanding whom you are dealing with in their words, and putting the things, facts in a proper manner. It's not fighting. It is fighting for your rights which are due to you. And for that, first and foremost thing is that you have to analyze the situation, what you are demanding, how to convince the management, maybe your boss or the head of the department. And then that will definitely, with a discussion, if you have a good analytical mind, you have made your good points, that is the way you have to do. It's your correctly and nicely, you have very nicely you have put forth. Yes, leaders are born, but still then with the circumstances, situation, you can develop leadership among oneself and then try to lead to your group. First oneself, and then that is the correct way to do that thing. Thank you. There is one more question for a medical physics team service in radiology, because most of the countries in radiology, very few medical physicists, they do work. And what advice you have to build professional relationship with a clinical team that's a radiologist?
Okay. In my opinion, the best way of getting a good relationship with radiologists, the first thing is get out of your office. Get out of your office. The more you are seen in the department, in the imaging department, because the more you will become appreciated. Remember, a lot of discussions are not done in offices. A lot of ideas are discussed in corridors. You meet somebody in the corridor, okay, and you tell him, you discuss something. Go for coffees with these people, okay? It's very important. If possible, try to become a member of the medical society, because often they appreciate a lot when you become a member of, you'll be an associate member, not a full member, so that people will get to know you also as a person, because it's important that people get to know you as a person, that you're a reliable person. For example, I look at myself, I always go for 2 conferences, definitely in a year. One is a medical physics conference, but then I also go to one where it's multidisciplinary. I don't only go to medical physics conferences, that's, you're isolating yourself. Okay, I always go to one which is multidisciplinary. And there it's important to start building bridges with the right kind of people, in the sense that radiologists are like everybody else. You'll find nice radiologists who like being team players, who like to discuss, who like to learn from medical physicists. On the other extreme, you find those who don't even want to know about you, okay? And you find a lot of people in the middle situation. This is normal, whatever. Even medical physicists, you find that, okay? Even medical physicists, you find problematic medical physicists. It's a question of character. So, but it's very important that you start, you look at those radiologists who you see have a positive view of medical physicists, and link up with them. Don't try to link up with everybody, especially don't try to link up with those who are hopeless. That's a waste of time. Analyze those who have a positive way of doing things and link with those. Okay, I for example, in my case, I have radiologists and radiographers. There are radiographers who might get along extremely well, others not so well because they have other ideas. Okay, again with radiologists. Okay, this is, again, this isn't just medical physics, it's part of life. Even if you're in a walking club or a geography club or a photography club, okay, you're going to, in there, you're not going to find nice people only. You're going to find nice people, overly crazy people, and many people somewhere in the middle. So you have to start analyzing, okay, who are the people with whom I can relate and create bridges? And this is the way to do it. There is no magic cure. This is the way that one sets up relationships with others. And don't try to expect that a relationship will be set up in 1 minute. It simply doesn't happen. Huh?
Okay, thank you, Carmel, for an extensive talk also, and the questions and the huge experience you have got, the analytical mind you have got to explain the things. And I'm sure that the participants have benefited, and it shows from their number of comments in the chat box if you go through appreciating the things. But I will be satisfied when they respond, when they learn from these things, and at least we see few of the leaders coming up leaders after this thing. That will be the fruitful usefulness of our this all AFOMP schools or webinars, time spent by you. So that is what we want to nurture. We want to bring up the next generation for a leadership. That is a purpose, and I'll be most happy. It's not that the fighting and quarreling, it is just putting our things into right perspective with our analytical mind and things. And it is a continuous process. Many a times what happens is we give up. Okay, once or twice to do it, and when you say, oh, I have tried and he is not budging, and then just you get nervous or you leave the thing. Don't leave to this thing unless you overcome these things. There will be people who are tough. So you must know how to crack the hardest nut, and then definitely you will get. One has to remember that medical physicists, though they are health professionals, their exposure into the health domain before they come to the profession is very less. But as far as the doctors, nurses or other things, they have a long duration time they have spent in the hospital. So you have to learn also the environment, the ethics, the integrities of the hospital and management, and you have to prove your utility, how you are important. And as rightly Carmel has said, that if you meet 10 people, all 10 will not be positive. So you try to bridge with the positive people and encash their goodwill, encash their position for your benefit. That's thing. So once again, I thank Carmel, Karuna for giving, sparing time. Excellent to all the attendees. Thanks to Chai Hong, who has give you the link to, if you want a certificate for the participant, it's a CME. You have got up 2 points, CPD accredited for each hour. So almost you will get 5 points for this thing. So you can write to that. Rajini Verma, who did a lot of work background, Jin Shians. Now in a continuity, we have a AFOMP school, and that is on 1st April. And this is 23rd AFOMP webinar on 1st April, and it will be Dr. Simone Dons. It will be APSIG activities for benefit of AFOMP region. This Australian voluntary NGO doing a lot of work into underdeveloped countries for establishment of medical physics services and radiotherapy. Then we have AFOMP school webinar on 23rd April, and this is on radiotherapy advanced techniques, and this will be from Chinese group, the Hong Kong group. This will be Michael Lee will be moderating this thing, and these are the speakers already on the AFOMP website. The next 22nd AOCMP will be in Taipei, Taiwan during 10 to 12 December, and already website is on. The information about the abstract is on. You can submit, you can participate, and AFOMP will support many of the young budding medical physicists. Then very next June, it will be coming up is a World Congress, which was supposed to be in 2021 because of the COVID is postponed. It's being held 12 to 17 June 2022 in a hybrid mode, and you can participate virtually or in person also. With these things, thanking each one of you for your active participation, and we'll continue these efforts of making our medical physics really a health professional and developing leadership qualities. And rightly said, You may be very good medical physicist, very good scientist, but you are not a leader. You cannot. See, you can a man can sail a sand, but if you are not have a sailing ability, even if gold cannot be sold by you. So that is what you have to think of, that how you develop, how you assert, how you put forth your views and things. So thank you once again. Have a safe time. Have a nice time. Hope to see you again on the 1st of April. Thank you, Carmel, each one of you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. See.